They were trying to replace Van Damme, and basically I was brought in to be that next guy. Man, every time I turned around, I was getting hurt on that movie. There's 200 people out there. You're standing out there naked, getting sunburned, and I'm like, this is day 3 or something of me being on movie. My understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding was um, they were trying to replace Van Damme. You know, his first 2 movies were so successful that he basically was renegotiating his contracts. And they were like, yeah, screw you. We'll just find the next guy. And they hired Mike Stone and a couple other guys, a top director, to go all over the world and find the next guy. And basically, I was brought in to be that next guy. The man in charge of that project, it's probably the only time in my entire life that I met a person and they instantly hated me. And I mean, for whatever reason. And that guy was in charge of the project. And I always remember he spent literally, I'd run into him here and there again throughout the years. And he literally spent about 3 hours just berating me, telling me I wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't this, wasn't that. And I'd never even met him before. And I've never had that in my life. And I remember sitting on, I was in the penthouse suite off Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood. There's Warner Brothers across the street. There's all that stuff. And you think, wow, man, I've made it. This is awesome. Mike brought me in. I'm meeting the guy. We're going to shake hands, make the deal. And you just realize it's just falling apart, and you just, um, and I always remember when I walked out, I was just like, Alan, that's great. And man, I don't even know what to say, but amazing to meet you. I'm glad you're so smart, and you speak 6 languages, and you're this and that, and I get it. You've trained all your life, um, but I do want you to know that if for some crazy reason we ever got into it, can't even imagine why, but if that ever happened, I would walk away, and you never would. Wasn't my best friend now. He wasn't then either. So Mike Stone was like, listen, I'm going to Africa to do American Ninja 4. Why don't you, quote unquote, let me manage you? And I'll bring you to Africa, South Africa. And let's just go from there. So, I got to go to South Africa, um, met a beautiful girl, met, Michael Dudikoff, met David Bradley, met, Cedric Soundstrom, met all the guys. Um, they ended up with a big delay, and that was great because Mike Stone was, movie fighting is not fighting. And so, Mike really drilled into me a lot of those differences. And, um, you know, eh, something interesting because I was already very, very cognizant of camera and angles because when I taught, I taught so many different things, and we were always, and I was very flexible to, hey, if you know something, you teach it. We'll investigate it. Wow, you can do a single leg takedown, and you can do this lock. Well, let's investigate how to beat that, or how to defeat it, or how to use it. And so we had so many techniques, and I had stacks and stacks and stacks of notes that I started filming. And to film things, I had to study camera. I took some acting classes. This is before this ever happened. And that was only so I could be a better teacher and get things on camera. How does, hey, if I punch you here and I'm like, well, that looks ridiculous. Let me change the angle. So I already understood a lot of that. But Mike really drilled into me how it worked and a lot of the sword work, how to modify that on camera. Um, Good and bad, I looked nothing like Michael Dudikoff, but I did look a lot like David Bradley. Basically, you know, dark hair, blue eyes, same height. Um, David was an amazing kicker. I mean, he's up there with Van Damme. He could kick. Michael, no. But Michael was more of an actor at that time anyway. And the great thing about Michael is Michael would let you make him look good. A stuntman's job, if I'm a stuntman, my entire job is to make you look good. Mike Stone was supposed to play Super Ninja. Something happened, you know, I kind of know, kind of don't. But anyway, they invited me to take the role. Um, as a ninja in a movie, you wear a mask. I played like 18 different people in that movie. And I did get to double David. There's times where it's his kick and his spin and his jump and his this. That's me. A couple times David because I was better at weapons. And so I would, fill in there. Even the fight in that movie where they both fight each other, supposed to be David with the mask and all that. Well, that worked out and I got to be both in some of that. So there are scenes where I spin and I'm like, oh man, I took the punch really well. It's I kicked and I took the kick.
Effectively, you're fighting yourself. To me, I mean, that's movie magic, but that is also crazy at the same time.
Yeah. So, there was another guy, our lead stunt coordinator, Ed Anders, he doubled for Michael sometimes. And he looked more like Michael, but I could kick higher and faster and do all that. And they tried to put a wig on me. It was so funny. They tried to put a wig on me. My head's too big, and it just looked retarded. So there are scenes. If you slow them down, you'll see Michael go to spin, and suddenly he has dark hair, and his foot comes around, and he hits the guy, and suddenly he has blonde hair again. But what was great about it, as far as a film, is not only did I get a real grounding because of all the delays. So I really, it was a fantastic time to be in South Africa. This is the end of the apartheid revolution. So, the black people that I knew were like, and a lot of different tribal people, and they were like, no, come to my village and come to my city and let's go over to this part, when I would have time off. And I took advantage of all that. The English were like, no, come to us. And the Afrikaans were like, no, come see what we do. And it was just really amazing time. And I was, for a better word, the American. So we had David, who's American, but he was kind of caught up between what was going on politically for the movie anyway. And then Michael was a star, he was already established. But I was still that, hey, it's my first movie. And, um, I'd be like, can I look through the camera? Well, you don't really do that, but no one had ever asked. So they're like, yeah, come on. And then they were like, all right, can I put on the headphones? Can I come to the editing room? Can I, and so I took advantage. I was just, obsessed with all of it. I draw and paint and write and do all those things. And suddenly I find this medium, film, that uses everything that I can do and more.
Obviously, you've got that opening scene of the movie, and am I right in saying that, like, you're in that opening scene as well, playing another character as well? So you're actually not only are you doubling this, the two stars of the movie,
Right.
you're the villain, but also you're in that opening sequence as well.
Yeah. And then Yeah, another funny one is, and this happened like, there's a couple funny stories on that opening scene even. One was Danny and Avi Lerner, Avi, Danny died, but Avi, owns Millennium Pictures. It was New Image and now, Millennium, which is one of the biggest independent film companies in the world. So they had come to set. It was my first day. And I don't know anything. And I remember I had that opening thing. I come running out, I got a shotgun, boom, boom. I don't know who I'm shooting, but whatever, you know, and throw the gun down and run. And the armor was like, do not drop my gun. Do not and I'm like, oh, okay. And they're so I'm like, bang, bang, set it down kind of gently and take off running. And I always remember like Danny and Avi are just going, what the hell is wrong with that kid, And finally they were like, throw the gun down. So like I was like, so I threw it down, And then man, every time I turned around, I was getting hurt on that movie. Small things, but as you remember, I take off running and I have a crossbow suddenly on my back. And a guy jumps and lands on me and kills me, right? If you remember it. Well, that crossbow is just things you don't think about. It has a steel trigger, so a piece that sticks up. And that popped through my chest into my ribs and, punctured me. Didn't go in through my lungs, but, it's like, oh, okay, bang. I mean, little things like near the end, there's all the big guys in the big melee in the end. And I wrap a guy up and choke him out. Just simple things. But he had like a leather jacket with spikes on it. And when I went to do that, I still have the scar. It sliced my bicep open because, I did it quick and he just, every time he turned around. But, there's a couple times David would take on a ninja and the ninja has whatever. That was me. A funny scene is when, the scene where they're in a little boat and the ninja come out of the water.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those guys.
Because that seemed like it would be very difficult to film, having to be submerged and then have to wait for the cue to go, right, now we're ready. Now you pop up.
It gives me some understanding of what waterboarding is because the mask is sucked up in. Now, in that, the stream wasn't very deep, but we did 2 or 3 takes trying to get the timing right. And on the last take, I'm about a quarter mile downstream and nobody knows it. And they never did. I came, pulled myself out of the bank and came, I'm half a mile down and would come walking up, and they're like, yeah, where you been, But every time I turned around, it's like, hey, we need another. Oh, Kely, you're good. So back to Delta Force. So the very beginning, bang, bang. Then they show this scene where it's like the CIA are briefing David, and they show some ninjas, and they're like, we've got some guys, and we beat them up and we push them through the gate. Well, I'm one of those guys, and then it was like day 3, my first nude scene. I'm the closest guy on camera, the naked guy, tied up.
Oh,
And that, I was like, wow, now dreaming of being an actor, and I'm like, wow, my first nude scene, and it's in a ninja movie. We had like these little loincloth, strings basically, and it's all that, and that was our costume. They do all the makeup, they do everything. And then I'm tied up, and then I remember hearing the director, let's go ahead and cut those off, And so there's 200 people out there. You're standing out there naked, getting sunburned, and I'm like, this is day 3 or something of me being on movie, and I'm like, whatever. But my only regret was in the movie was, as far as the film, is in the original story, from what I understand, and it would have made more sense. I was supposed to, that scene where they have we're flipping off the apparatus and we're doing our obstacle course, and David ends up fighting a guy and they beat him up, and then that's why they bring Michael in. Well, I was supposed to fight David and win.
Well, yeah, that would make
David,
sense. That would be the
that's why they
reason.
bring Michael in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But David really went crazy and, he didn't like that idea. He's supposed to be the hero. And
But
that
that's
caused a
disappointing
lot
because
of
that would
problems.
serve the story much better.
It would have served the story. And I wasn't crazy about the story. I'm like, hey, this is all kind of silly and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm so in love with film suddenly, and just took advantage. And months went by and got to work on it. And man, we got to ride horses in the movie, which we cut out. And I mean, we're riding on that cliff. It's a couple thousand feet up, and that was filmed in Lesotho, which is all plateaus and cliffs. And just got, really got a taste of every part of film.
That fight scene that didn't happen, I mean, that would have looked great, I'm sure.
It just would have made sense, but and that became, a point of contention, not from my point of view. I was just like, man, I'm just kind of happy to be here. And I missed a lot of opportunities. I didn't push, hey, I'm happy to be here. And if I had known more what's going on, which I found out, some months later and some years later, I missed a lot of opportunities, just not being aggressive enough and not knowing anything.
Yeah.
And Mike was caught up in his own things, Mike Stone, and so it wasn't like, hey, I can have all these discussions or anything. It was just like, kind of, I was brought there and kind of left on my own, and like a little kid in a candy store, I'm having fun, and learning. Um, but there were a lot of missed opportunities.
So what was your relationship like with David Bradley and Michael Dudikoff?
We got to hang out a little bit, but Michael again was brought in as the star. And the problem was he wasn't brought in until like the movie was half over. That was a big part of the delay. And I know some of the things, I think, so don't even hesitate to say them. But I like David. I thought he was in a bad position too. He had done American Ninja 3. American Ninja 3 had, from what I understood, had just more or less come out when they started production on that. And it wasn't doing the numbers that they wanted. And, Menachem Golan, the exec producers on that, Canon Pictures, Golan Globus, um, it's about dollars and cents. So they gave Michael a big contract to come in and, in their mind, save the movie. Well, that put David in a really weird position. And so that created a lot of tension with those guys. And I was a little bit caught up in the middle. There's other things, but
I mean,
but I missed out.
it's kind of a shame, really. I mean, if you think about it, years later we had the Expendables movie where we have all of these action stars together in the same film, but
It'd be great.
at that time that was not a thing. Everyone was like a rival, and um, Sly
Yeah,
and Ali and that sort of thing. So I would imagine that it would have been that sort of dynamic
and
on
then
on
and then
this.
suddenly I was a new guy and not threatening them in any way, but the thing was, from what I understand, Menachem Golan, later I had a three-picture deal with Menachem for me. Never happened because he was going bankrupt. I didn't know any of that. I'm caught up into it. But from what I understand, Menachem liked actors, like new actors, that he could market as if they were older actors. So Michael Dudikoff was a muscular James Dean, and that's why he loved him. And when I met Menachem, which was, a year later, 2 years later, after this movie, I didn't meet him before. I was the new martial art Mel Gibson for him. And that's the way he looked at me. So I was a potential new star and being thrust between the two guys a little bit. And so, I stories I heard later and kind of knew what was going on, but let me just play my part. And hey, I'm making a little bit of money. I have a stunning, beautiful girlfriend. I have per diem. I'm living in a five-star hotel. I'm getting to make movies. Even if I'm missing out on opportunities or I'm getting screwed over on some other opportunities or whatever, I'm still getting an opportunity that people would kill and dream for. So don't, just take it for what it is. And I got to learn from David and Michael. It was a lot of, to get to watch them work and do their thing and be there almost every single day on all aspects was really great, you know.
And did you talk martial arts with David Bradley? Because he's got like a proper martial arts background, hasn't he?
Yes, but there again, whatever rivalry or whatever you want to call it, what I was really good in, people knew me from Kali as well, so they, whatever weapon I picked up, I could use it. And um, David couldn't. But he was a great kicker. He could kick better than me. I'm not saying he could kick harder or even faster, but as far as form, I mean, he could do the jump, split, turn kicks. He could do 180-degree side kicks. He could do all that. And, I couldn't, you know, um, but I could fight.
What do you remember about, the climax of the movie, the fight scene at the end?
Yeah, again, I got, I had, the moves that Michael did on me were the moves I showed him how to do on me. And so I was like, let me, I wanted to do a little more. Um, there was a bit of fun because, when the crowd comes in, you're supposed to barely kick this guy and he moves aside, because you don't really, not supposed to really beat each other up on set. And I have to say there were a lot of times there were just guys in my way and I would just, hey, let me just kind of wail on them. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. And then, and what I remember, and if you go back, even now, I watch it and I go, whoa. I mean, the adrenaline is going. I was pretty fast. And I remember, like an example, I remember we had a fight, I had a fight with Michael early on. And maybe it was that fight, but I do a spin kick and I'm supposed to, slam him. He's going to get hit. So, you rehearse. Let me go back up just really funny. There's a great story. When I was first told, I told you I would say, hey, let me come to the editing room. Let me do all that. And they were like, yeah, one of Michael's first scenes, and I don't know this is true, but I'm guessing it is. They were like, one of Michael's very first scenes in his movies, you're doing the fight scene. So you're like, okay, I'm going to hit you here. I'm going to hit you here. Bang. I'm going to hit you. Ah. I'm going to hit you. Wham. Well, you're doing that over and over, rehearsing. Well, you're also practicing bang, bang, whang, pow. So when they said action, they're like, Michael's like, bang, just boom. And when they told me that, I just thought it was the funniest thing ever. My very first fight scene, they brought me to the editing room, and they're like, Kely, watch this scene, and there I am, bang, pow, boom. And they were like, you don't have to do that. We'll put the sound effects in later. Don't worry. But I always remember that scene. So on that scene with Michael, back to the fight, I do the spin kick and it's gonna, but if I want to stop my hand, like I can hit you really hard in the chest and only touch your shirt. I mean, I can go from 10 feet away and slam, and I'm not going to touch your chest. I'm going to hit your shirt. Well, they weren't used to any of that. They want to be like this far away. And the camera will do the foreshortening. So I would be more like 5 or 6 inches away, which would freak them out a little bit. But, once they trusted me, that was fine. But I always remember on that one kick with Michael, we do it. Okay, we're getting faster, rehearse. You got it. Okay, Michael, you know what you're doing. And probably being fast, etc. But now add the adrenaline, and they're like action. I always remember my foot was coming. I would have torn his head off. He was supposed to duck, and he hadn't. I could see it somehow. I don't know how I did it, but I could see in his eyes he didn't even know I moved yet, and it would have splattered him. And somehow I was able to take my foot even higher, and it went over his head. And the cameraman's right there, and it slammed the camera. The cameraman went flying, and then they took me aside just a few minutes later, and they were like, "We just want to say thank you because we can replace the camera. It's no big deal, but the amount of money it would have cost to smash Michael's face would not have been good." We'd have had delays. Mike would have been beat up. It would have cost a lot of money. So thank you, and they recognized it as well. But I always remember that. But it was great. But if you watch, even now, I watch it, and if you when he kicks me in the very final thing, and I go flying back, and I land on the boxes. Well, I did that. And for whatever reason, they're boxes. They're not cardboard boxes. They're. But if you look at how high I actually go, I mean, just with a little twitch of my feet, I mean, and you're on a ledge. It's not that big a deal. You're on a ledge, but the ledge is up 3 or 4 feet. So the boxes are below that, and I go up about 5 or 6 or 7 feet in the air somehow. So, it ends up being a 7, 8 foot drop. And then, of course, they have a dummy and blow me up, but that's the end of me. And I'm like, "Ah." But just the height that I had without going, "Ah," just to like take it as a kick and send myself flying. Even when I watch it, I go, because I can't do that now. you know, I'm like, maybe a couple inches, but not 5 feet in the air.